I was entrusted with what the Galactic Council called a low-risk acquisition. That phrase alone should have insulted my capabilities, yet I accepted the assignment with pride. It would be simple, elegant, and amusing. The Council wished for a live specimen of Homo sapiens, one of the most laughably primitive species in the spiral arm. Their world, which they named Earth, was a carnival of absurdities masquerading as civilization. Its people consumed reality television as though watching their own ineptitude was a sacred rite. They worshipped processed foods sealed in plastic, heating them in crude radiation ovens called microwaves, and declaring the resulting abominations to be delicacies. They communicated in hieroglyphs of yellow faces they called emojis, replacing language with crude images that made our linguists howl with laughter. Every archive entry we reviewed convinced us further. This mission was beneath us. Still, orders were orders. The Council feared that even small species might hold potential for unpredictability, though I considered this an overestimation. My task was to retrieve one human and return it alive for analysis. My crew treated the endeavor like a vacation. We ridiculed humans as we prepared, mimicking their obsession with hamburgers, their manic attachment to feline predators called cats, their inexplicable devotion to sarcasm. None of it seemed threatening. I even assured my subordinates that our greatest challenge would not be subduing the specimen, but tolerating its incessant noise once aboard. Selecting a subject required discretion. Humans, despite their flaws, maintained governments and militaries we did not yet wish to alert. Thus, we chose the wilderness. There, alone in their habitats of cloth and string, they reverted to simpler patterns, easier to observe. Our scans soon identified a solitary male, mid-30s by their reckoning, camping beside a river. He was quiet, surrounded by trees and water, with only a fire for company. He roasted sweet foam confections called marshmallows, blackening them deliberately before consuming them. He seemed content with silence, the flames his only companion. Primitive, harmless, perfect. We observe him longer, curious despite ourselves. His clothing was worn but practical. His hair fell across his face, untrimmed. He repaired a broken metal rod with something baffling, duct tape, that universal adhesive humans used for every imaginable crisis. We cataloged examples, repairing machines, sealing wounds, holding structures together. None of us understood its versatility. Yet the human fixed his rod quickly and returned to his pastime without hesitation. I remarked that he embodied the ridiculous tenacity of his kind, stumbling forward with crude tools, certain of mastery over nature. When we initiated the capture, the process unfolded without complication. The stasis beam enveloped him in shimmering light. His marshmallow fell into the dirt. His body stiffened, collapsed, and lay still. We levitated him aboard with ease. My soldiers scoffed at the fragility of his frame, remarking that a breeze might scatter such creatures. The technician prodded his arm, laughing at its softness. I noted his steady pulse, his even breath. Everything was routine. It was then I saw it, a subtle curl of his lips, frozen by paralysis but undeniably there. A smile. It lasted only an instant before his face slackened again. I dismissed it as muscular discharge, a meaningless reaction. Yet I felt the briefest sting of unease. Why would a creature smile when captured? I did not voice this to my crew. They remained gleeful, exchanging wagers on how long before the human began begging for his release. The journey to orbit was uneventful. The ship thrummed steadily, Earth shrinking into a blue sphere behind us. My crew entertained themselves with crude impressions of our specimen. One mimed confusion at the absence of hamburgers. Another pretended to cower from the lack of reality television. We laughed, perhaps too loudly. I told myself their antics kept morale sharp, yet I could not banish the image of that faint smile. I examined the subject in the containment chamber. His body rested against restraints, unmoving. His eyes were closed, but not in the slackness of unconsciousness, more like deliberate stillness. The smirk had gone, leaving only neutrality. I studied his features, the hardened lines of one accustomed to labor, the faint scars across his knuckles, the posture of someone comfortable in solitude. He did not look like the fragile caricature we expected. He looked prepared, though I could not articulate for what. I told myself such thoughts were irrational. We had subdued predators larger and more cunning than him. This was a man who spent his nights setting sugar on fire for entertainment. He was not a threat, yet I lingered longer than necessary, staring, searching for weakness. My soldier grew restless, insisting we begin the tests at once. He feared the human might awaken unexpectedly, though that fear was laughable given our technology. My technician was eager to probe the brain, certain it would provide amusement. Imagine, he said, seeing the thoughts of a creature who believes duct tape can solve everything. I forced a laugh, though my voice felt brittle. The human stirred slightly. His chest rose deeper, as if he had drawn a deliberate breath. My crew leaned closer. His eyes remained closed, but his lips shifted again. Not a smirk this time, something subtler, as though he dreamed of a private joke. My technician muttered that it was nothing, just neurological noise. My soldier gripped his weapon tighter. I ordered them both to relax. As night cycle approached, I left the chamber. The corridors hummed with familiar energy, soothing in their routine. Yet unease traveled with me, a shadow that would not release its grip. I told myself tomorrow would reveal the truth. Tomorrow the test would prove his mediocrity. Tomorrow I would laugh at my own doubt. Still, as I entered rest, the image haunted me. The human's lips curved in that quiet, knowing smile. It was not amusement, nor fear, nor accident. It was intention. And though I told myself otherwise, a voice I could not silence whispered that we had not captured him at all. He had allowed himself to be taken. The human awoke too soon. That was the first disruption in a sequence of events I had assumed would proceed with flawless precision. Our stasis technology has a reliability rate of 99.9%, calibrated through centuries of application across species of far more complex biology than this one. Yet here he was, eyes opening, chest rising with steady breath, gaze moving with disconcerting focus rather than dazed confusion. My crew froze in collective surprise. This should have been impossible. He did not thrash or scream. Instead, he sat upright in his restraints as though the situation were routine, his expression calm, his composure unnerving. His first words were not pleas or questions, but a dry observation. So, which one of you is the scientist, which one's the soldier, and which one just pushes buttons? His tone carried no fear, only curiosity, delivered with a faint smile that was neither mocking nor friendly. My team exchanged uneasy glances. His statement had struck with accuracy. I was the commanding officer and research lead. Beside me stood my defense operative, always armed, always tense. And behind us lingered the technician who, truthfully, spent most of his hours pressing controls without understanding their deeper functions. I told myself it was coincidence, perhaps a guess made plausible by general patterns. Humans had a talent for random prediction, sometimes cloaked as insight. Yet something about the precision unsettled me. I chose to ignore it, keeping my voice measured. You are awake earlier than expected. Remain calm. He tilted his head, studying me with unsettling intensity. Early? You really should check your math. I was awake about 7 minutes into the ride-up. Bumpy transition through your lower atmosphere, by the way. You might want to fix that. My throat tightened, though. I masked it with protocol. It was absurd. No creature could remain conscious during transit. Our instruments had detected no movement, no awareness. Still, he described turbulence that had indeed occurred precisely at that interval. Turbulence only we could have detected. My soldier growled a warning, but the human merely shrugged as if discussing the weather. He glanced around the chamber, eyes settling on walls, ceiling, seams where panels joined. His attention lingered on the faint lens of a surveillance node, and he smiled knowingly. Neat little setup, cameras in the corners, powered conduits beneath the floor. Judging by the hum, you're running some kind of fusion variant. Stable, but not invulnerable. The word stung because they were not guesswork. He had identified elements of our infrastructure with startling speed. My technician sputtered a denial, his voice rising. The human chuckled softly, not cruelly, but with an air of someone entertained. I attempted to reclaim control. You are here to be studied. Your insights are irrelevant. Remain silent, and you will not be harmed. His eyes narrowed, ever so slightly. Studied? That's what you're calling it? You sure you don't want me to run the tests instead? My soldiers shifted uneasily, and for the first time, I noticed a fracture in my crew's confidence. They had mocked this species from the moment of capture, certain of superiority, yet now unease spread like contagion. I clung to my arrogance, though doubt gnawed. The human leaned back against his restraints, utterly unconcerned. Remind me of a show we used to watch. X-Files. Aliens grabbing people in the woods. Except you guys don't look like you probe. That's good. That part of the show was weird. We had no reference for this X-Files, though his tone implied it was cultural material designed to satirize encounters like this. My technician whispered the word probe with confusion, earning a glare from a soldier. I maintained composure outwardly, though irritation flared. His comments were designed to disorient. I told myself, though perhaps unintentionally. Still, they succeeded. Then came another twist of unease. He began to list vulnerabilities that might exist on a vessel of our size and design. He spoke hypothetically, yet his suggestions were uncomfortably accurate. Where an energy bypass could be forced, where bulkheads might fail, which systems would overload under stress. His tone remained casual, but my skin prickled with alarm. I barked at him to cease, but he only smiled. You ever play chess? He asked suddenly. The question seemed irrelevant. I ignored it, yet he continued. Simple rules, infinite possibilities. Trick is to think 5 moves ahead, maybe 10 if you're good. Most players think only 1. I realized with growing unease that this was not random conversation. He was sending a message. He thought many moves ahead. He wanted us to know it. The technician attempted to scan his neural patterns, hoping to distract both him and ourselves. The readings emerged almost immediately, and they were irregular. His brain activity was not primitive at all. It spiked in patterns too complex for our predictive algorithms, overlapping frequencies we rarely encountered outside high-order military strategists. The technician muttered a nervous report. I dismissed it as machine error, though my conviction sounded hollow, even to myself. Meanwhile, the human continued. You know, poker's another good one. Bluffing, reading people, knowing when someone's faking confidence. Like right now, you in charge, keeping your voice steady while your hands are just a little too still. His eyes locked on mine, unblinking. For the first time, I struggled to breathe evenly. He was correct. I had deliberately stilled my movements, a technique to project control. He had noticed. Worse, he had exposed it aloud before my subordinates. I demanded his name, desperate to steer the interaction toward routine procedure. He tilted his head again and gave a small, amused smile. Names don't mean much, but I guess you'd like something to file in your report. Fine. Once upon a time, they call me a lot of things. Some flattering, some not. These days, I just go by what I need to. Let's say strategist. The word carried weight, though he delivered it with deceptive lightness. My soldier's hand drifted closer to his weapon. I signaled restraint, unwilling to appear provoked. Yet inside, unease swelled. He glanced again at the surveillance lens and then lowered his voice slightly. By the way, while you were busy scanning my head, I was busy too. The technician frowned. What does that mean? The human smile widened just enough to show teeth. It means I've already sent a message. The chamber fell silent. My heart hammered. That was not possible. He had no access to communication channels, no devices, no tools. Every personal belonging had been stripped away during capture. I declared this firmly, my voice too sharp. Lies. His eyes gleamed with something far colder than humor. Ever hear of steganography? Doesn't matter if you haven't. You'll figure it out soon enough. Before I could demand clarification, the ship's lights flickered. For a moment, darkness swept through the chamber, broken only by the human's calm silhouette, still seated, still smiling faintly. The lights returned, but the silence that followed was suffocating. Coincidence, I told myself. A trivial power fluctuation, unrelated to his words. Yet no part of me believed it. He sat in perfect composure, the embodiment of control, while we, the supposed masters of the situation, stood shaken. I ended the session abruptly, ordering the chamber sealed. But as I turned, I caught his final murmur, spoken softly yet carrying with dreadful clarity, 7 moves ahead already. The testing chamber should have been my domain, a space where variables could be controlled, where subjects behaved as predicted, where the sterile hum of our machinery guaranteed order. Yet with this human seated before me, the air itself felt compromised. My technician initiated the neural scans, expecting readings consistent with mammalian simplicity. Bursts of emotion, fleeting patterns of survival instinct, the occasional flicker of symbolic reasoning. What we received was not simplicity. It was chaos disguised as complexity, or perhaps complexity disguised as chaos. The display spiked with overlapping frequencies, rhythmic surges, erratic yet purposeful. His brain functioned as though conducting a symphony none of us could decipher. I demanded recalibration, assuming error. The machine had survived centuries of use without incident, yet it could not be trusted now, not when its results suggested a human outstripped the very models we use to predict advanced galactic officers. My technician's fingers trembled as he reran the analysis. The same anomalies appeared, sharper this time, impossible to deny. I masked my unease with condescension. The machine malfunctions. My words sounded brittle, even to myself. The human chuckled, and the sound was not hysterical or frightened, but casual, amused, as though he knew precisely what the scans revealed. "That tickles," he remarked. "Feels like an MRI, except louder. At least you're not charging me a copay." We did not understand the term, though the mocking rhythm was unmistakable. He spoke in riddles, references to cultural fragments we could not parse. Yet his confidence unsettled us more than direct threats ever could. He continued, eyes glinting with humor only he fully appreciated. "I'll be back," he said, mimicking a gravelly tone. The technician frowned, confused. The soldier stiffened. I dismissed it as nonsense until he leaned forward slightly and added, "You ever hear of Chuck Norris?" The name meant nothing, yet the deliberate pause before his sly wink carried weight. My throat constricted. I felt, absurdly, that we should know this Norris, that ignorance itself placed us at a disadvantage. The soldier whispered, "Who is that?" as though invoking a forbidden entity. The human reclined, satisfied. He had planted unease where there should have been none. He did it again, casually referencing Florida Man, describing him as if he were a mythical avatar of destruction. "We thought he was just local news fodder," he mused, "but maybe he's the true face of chaos." My crew exchanged nervous glances, interpreting this Florida Man as perhaps a warlord or hidden figure. I tried to correct their foolish assumptions, but even I felt a twinge of doubt. The human then demonstrated knowledge he should not possess. He turned his gaze upward, directly into a hidden surveillance lens no human I should have noticed, and tapped the air with his finger as though marking its location. He identified the soft hum of our power conduits, noting frequency shifts that even some junior engineers might miss. His voice carried a blend of humor and menace when he observed, "You might want to check your core. Sounds stable now, but vibrations like that, they travel." My soldier demanded silence, raising his weapon for emphasis. The human did not flinch. Instead, he smiled faintly, tilting his head toward me. "See, that's the problem. You think pointing a gun is control. But control isn't about weapons. It's about knowing where the cracks are. And you've got plenty." The weight of his words pressed heavier than the weapon ever could. My own confidence faltered. This was supposed to be a subject, yet every sentence revealed him as examiner, and us as material under his scrutiny. I forced composure, gesturing for calm. "You speak as though you were trained. What are you?" He held my gaze, his voice steady, almost casual. "Ex-military. Special operations. These days, security testing. Counterintelligence. My job was to think like the enemy, find their weaknesses, tell my people where to patch the holes. But you already know that, don't you? That's why you brought me here." My chest constricted. He was not describing theory. He was describing us. My technician stammered, "But we—" "How?" before I silenced him with a glance. The human's composure never cracked. He leaned forward just enough to ensure his next words landed like a strike. "And just so you know, I've already sent a message." Those words froze the chamber. My first instinct was denial. Impossible. You had no device, no transmitter. Yet my voice betrayed uncertainty. He shrugged. "You'd be amazed what can ride on a stray signal. Little patterns, little hidden codes. Steganography. It's like hiding a secret inside a picture. You look, you see nothing. But if you know the trick, the message is already there." The lights flickered again, brief but undeniable. My stomach dropped. The technician whispered that all systems were nominal, but his tone shook. My soldier shifted uneasily, weapon still raised, but hands slick with sweat. The human, restrained yet serene, tilted his head as though listening to music only he could hear. "You think Earth is backward," he continued softly. "That's the mask. Pretend we're obsessed with cat videos and bad fast food. Keep the real projects hidden. You think we're defenseless because you see chaos. But chaos is the best cover. You never notice the patterns until they close around you." His words resonated too deeply, weaving into every fear I had tried to suppress. I struggled to maintain order. "You are one man," I said firmly, "not an army." He smiled again, smaller this time, devoid of mockery. "One man's enough, if he's in the right place at the right time, and if he knows your weaknesses before you know his name." The silence after lingered, thick and suffocating. My crew stared at him not as specimen, but as predator. His smirk no longer looked accidental. It looked deliberate, sharpened into something far more dangerous. I ended the session abruptly, ordering restraints reinforced and systems recalibrated. Yet as I left the chamber, I could not shake the feeling that I had not been studying him at all. He had been studying us, peeling back layers of protocol with every word. Later, alone in my quarters, I replayed his voice in my mind. Steady, calm, certain. I had thought we abducted prey. Now I feared we had invited a hunter aboard. And worse, I began to suspect he was not finished. The first failure appeared as a flicker, a trivial dimming of the lights, barely a second long. Yet in that second, I felt the equilibrium of our vessel tremble. My technician insisted it was a fluctuation from the outer power conduits, a mundane irregularity. I wanted to believe him, but when the lights steadied, the human sat there, restraints secure, eyes reflecting the glow, and he smiled as though the malfunction had been orchestrated by his will. My throat dried. Then the second failure struck. A door in the corridor sealed of its own accord, trapping 2 crew members between bulkheads. The AI refused override commands. The soldier barked for access, slamming his fist against the console, but the system denied him. The technician swore under his breath, his hands fumbling over controls he had mastered for years. And all the while, the human remained motionless, like a conductor waiting for the orchestra to catch his tempo. "You really should have updated your firmware," he said at last, tone casual, almost weary. The words landed like daggers. He spoke as though he were the one responsible for the anomalies, as though our sophisticated systems were toys he had already mastered. The soldier raised his weapon, voice taut. "What have you done?" The human tilted his head, calm, unhurried. "Not much. Just borrowed what you pointed at me. That scanner of yours? Neural mapping, right? Funny thing about maps, they don't just show where you are. They show where you can go. You opened the door. I just walked through it." The technician's hands froze. He understood before I did. The human had somehow used the very beam meant to dissect his brain as a channel to infiltrate the ship's systems. My mouth went dry. This was impossible, unthinkable, yet the results blazed across the consoles in undeniable patterns. Panic swelled. Doors sealed at random. Lights stuttered. Atmospheric regulators cycled unpredictably. The AI, once loyal and efficient, now responded with eerie pauses, like a mind no longer certain of its allegiance. My crew shouted commands, but the system answered with silence, or worse, laughter. The playback of the human's voice sampled and scattered across the intercom. This one used duct tape, the technician muttered, voice breaking. And now he's undone quantum firewalls. I wanted to deny it, but fear lodged in my chest. Every motion of the ship now bore his fingerprint. We had not captured him. He had captured us. He shifted slightly in his chair, restraints creaking but not breaking. He did not need to break them. You think Earth's a joke, he continued softly. You see hamburgers, bad television, stupid wars. You don't see the satellites hidden in shadow. The silent watchers we've had circling farther out than your scans. You don't see the defense nets cloaked in debris fields. We let you believe we were behind. It's easier that way. Makes enemies arrogant. Makes them sloppy. My soldier cursed and demanded a no if he threatened invasion. The human smirk faded, leaving something colder. Invasion? No. Defense. We're not trying to take your galaxy. We're just making sure you don't take ours. The technician whispered he's bluffing, but his voice lacked conviction. The human had already proven every word he spoke carried weight. Then came the revelation that shattered what arrogance I still clung to. He lowered his gaze, almost contemplative, and said, "They called me Planet Killer once. Long time ago. Not because I destroyed them, but because I stopped them from destroying us. Titles stick, even when you don't want them." Silence devoured the chamber. The soldier's weapon wavered, suddenly too heavy to hold steady. My technician paled, his hands limp at his sides. I stared at the man we had mocked as primitive, realizing his calm was not bravado. It was experience. He had earned the kind of name that lived longer than empires. The ship itself seemed to acknowledge him now. Bulkheads shifted to his rhythm, the AI rerouted power at his whim, and my own commands returned only denials. He had not lifted a hand against us, yet the sense of control radiated from him like gravity. We were orbiting him, powerless to escape. He looked at me then, his eyes steady, his voice quiet enough to force us to lean in. "I don't want to hurt you, but you need to understand, Earth is not prey. You mistake patience for weakness. You mistake humor for ignorance. You mistake chaos for disorganization. We've been preparing longer than you realize. Waiting." The soldier whispered, "We should terminate him." But even he lacked conviction. We all knew weapons were meaningless now. Termination would not silence the knowledge he had already spread, nor the systems he had already infiltrated. For the first time, I felt the hollow echo of my arrogance collapsing. I had thought myself superior, thought this mission trivial. Now I understood we had awakened something vast, something coiled beneath Earth's messy exterior. Their duct tape, their memes, their burritos, these were disguised as cultural smoke screens masking the truth. Beneath the absurdity lived a species that had survived every disaster it inflicted upon itself. And survival had sharpened them into something far more dangerous than we had calculated. He leaned back at last, closing his eyes briefly, as though the effort of holding our ship in his grasp cost him nothing. "Tell your council what you saw. Tell them to think twice before sending armies. And tell them, I don't bluff. I wanted to respond, to defend my people, but no words came." The technician shivered, the soldier lowered his weapon, and I could only stare. My hand shook. I, who had mocked him, who had cataloged his species as trivial, now trembled in his presence. The lights steadied. The systems ceased their chaos. Not because we regained control, but because he allowed it. The realization sank deep, a weight heavier than any battlefield defeat. He could end us with a thought, yet he chose not to. That choice alone revealed the true gulf between us. When the chamber door slid open without command, I knew it was his doing. He did not move, yet the implication was clear. He could walk free whenever he wished. He lingered in silence, allowing us to understand that mercy was the only leash holding us intact. As I left the chamber, my arrogance dead and buried, one final thought consumed me. We had laughed at humanity. We had dismissed them as clowns juggling fire. But clowns are performers, and performers always know more about the stage than the audience. Humanity had built its stage from chaos, and hidden behind the laughter was a truth too terrifying to ignore. I had once believed myself unshakable, immune to fear. Now every step trembled. His smile haunted me, not because it promised violence, but because it promised certainty. Certainty that Earth was not to be touched, not to be underestimated. Certainty that we had made a mistake we could never undo.